Hiya! Welcome to this, my 73rd episode of VideoFuzzy. I'm your host, Terry J. Aman, sifting my basket of media memories, and in this installment, titled 6 Seasons in a Movie, I archived most of IFC's run of Community recently. That was fun. Fond reflections of Christopher Plummer, shout out to the All About Agatha podcast, a look at the Life on Mars finale, and comments on Miss America on Hulu. Welcome to the show.
He doesn't have that on video, does he? We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy.
Later, I'm going to talk about hanging out with my friend Jesse, so figured I should mention, vaccinated. Yay! And for sure, I've been heartened by the direction U.S. infection rates have been heading. I'm still committed to masking up, maintaining social distance, hand washing, and staying in when we're able to. We will be able to put this in our rear view if we take it seriously. Apart from that, turning 51 soon, again, yay, no real plans, but looking forward to doing travel type stuff again once it's safer. And with that,
Friday Night Feature.
Picking something to feature was challenging this time, as it often is with this podcast. A late production episode of 24 turned into the most on-screen introspection we ever actually get from Jack Bauer in the run of the series. An episode of Bones dives into a Harajuku Japanese youth culture in ways I'm certain weren't at all culturally insensitive. Had pilot episodes turn up for Parks and Rec, ABC murder mystery series Harper's Island, and Renoa Hawley's The Unusuals, which I do want to circle back to at some point. Iconic episodes of Breaking Bad and South Park, but this past month or so has just been me marinating in, as it turns out, all 6 seasons of Dan Harmon's Community, with the theme song, At Least It Was Here, by the 88. Give me some rope, tie me to a dream, give me the hope to run out of steam. Somebody said it could be here. We could be roped up, tied up, dead in a year. I can't count the reasons I should stay. One by one, they all just fade away. Oh, now it's making me wonder what it would sound like if Vance Joy were to sing it, though. Cool. Recently, IFC ran, I would guess all, at least the vast majority of the situation comedy Community that premiered in 2009 and starred Joel McHale as Jeff Winger, a peek at the alternate universe from USA's Suits, where he'd been lawyering without a license till they caught him at it, kicked him out, and I don't want to do this a lot because sound files, there's tracking, copyrights, but no way I'm going to do it justice. His conversation with John Oliver as Professor Duncan at Greendale Community College in a pilot episode.
Well, I thought you had a bachelor's from Columbia, and now I have to get one from America.
Just, when I've complained in the past about misdelivered lines, you really need to celebrate when they're delivered perfectly, which in this series is damn near all of them. Winger is immediately distracted by Gillian Jacobs as Britta Perry. He leans on Danny Pudi, his fellow student and recent acquaintance Abed Nadir, to pull her into a made-up study group that turns out to be a real study group, because Abed actually told lots of people in the class, including Yvette Nicole Brown as mom and business major Shirley Bennett, Donald Glover as former high school jock Troy Barnes, Alison Brie as high achiever Annie Edison, and Chevy Chase as forever student and rich weirdo Pierce Hawthorne. The study group is primarily for their Spanish class, led by Ken Jeong as Senior Chang, at a school headed up by Jim Rash as the not especially closeted, Dean Craig Pelton. Since last time I DVR grabbed and I have archived and cataloged most of IFC's rebroadcast of the NBC series, including most of Season 6, which aired exclusively online at Yahoo Screen, and I missed entirely. Actually, quite a lot of the later episodes were completely new for me. Jeff Winger returning to teach in Season 5 after a disastrous attempt as a public defender, forming the Save Greendale Committee and ultimately doing that. The 6th season opener I've not seen yet, but I thought the closing scene for the series was perfect. This show went everywhere and explored everything. The much-highlighted diversity of the group layered in with hit-and-miss romantic entanglements, Shirley's religious orthodoxy in the face of diverse practice and adherence, everyone's various reasons for being there, and the surrounding world the show drew from. We had Abed's complete lack of filter, which allowed him to comment on personality conflicts from most directions, and Pierce's casual and not always casual racism and sexism touching off others. Troy was a lovable goof, but in flashbacks was a full-of-himself jock, so he absolutely improved as a person through the series. But despite experiencing many things and being a preternaturally gifted plumber, was never burdened overmuch by intelligence. One character point on his plumbing and AC repair skills: when facing down a head-to-head life-or-death AC repair situation, he Kobayashi Maru'd that thing and managed to save both of them. And no commentary on Community would be complete without highlighting the delightful bromance that developed between Troy and Abed. From the earliest episodes, short closing segments featured Troy and Abed goofing off together, dancing, freestyling, ripping on other students.
We can hear you.
These developed into morning show segments, Troy and Abed in the morning, where they'd set up in the library, sometimes with a crowd of Greendale students in the windows behind them, sometimes with a confused guest who wondered why there were no cameras, and what exactly this was. After a funeral, they had a Troy and Abed are in mourning riff. A collection of short, spooky stories ended with Troy and Abed so together. We got Troy and Abed in a bubble. And I think once they moved in together, we had a night version of Troy and Abed in the morning nights, where they called Jeff at 3 a.m. and also took a call from their roommate, Annie. But that was the thing about IFC airing these things. The last 15 to 20 seconds of the show were always on the next episode, which in this marathon airing often followed one to the next, but not every time. So my collection is missing the payoff in a few of these segments, which that's okay. And I did get most of the dark existential dread of the family playing the home game at the end of the series finale. Oh, and the one where Troy and Abed are having a green screen space battle. That one recorded really weird, but it's all there. If I ever do the home box set for this, it'll be repairable. That'll be way too meta. The series is fantastic. I'm glad to have it. IFC is still re-airing episodes. I've already been able to fill in a few I missed somehow the first time around. I've archived 103 of the 110 episodes, which itself would be plenty, but I know I missed a few significant ones, including their first Dungeons & Dragons installment in Season 2. There were weird crossover references with Cougar Town, another favorite series of mine, which itself had a few such fourth wall breakers, including multiple appearances by friends and Scrubs. And if the show was ever in danger of getting too far up its own butt, the writers went on little reference fugues like The Right Stuff and The Perfect Storm, Doctor Who, Downton Abbey, Pulp Fiction, and My Dinner with Andre, Ghost, and Grey's Anatomy, when Abed had some kind of nervous breakdown in his dreamatorium, which is a sort of holodeck, but different. The show had a couple of blanket forts and pillow forts, evoking Ken Burns' Civil War presentation. There were multiple paintball wars, an 8-bit video game adventure introducing Breaking Bad's Giancarlo Esposito as Pierce's recurring half-brother. We got a contest where the floor was lava, and we learned all kinds of imaginative ways to get around in that situation. There was a point, I'm sure it made all kinds of sense, when Annie lost her pen. The entire cast ended up in its underwear, using the study room table as privacy wall on opposite sides of the room. A Halloween party devolved into a zombie attack. A Model UN devolved into interdimensional conflict. And there was some suggestion at one point that the show was set entirely inside an insane asylum. The show also explored the concept of darkest timeline, awakened during a housewarming party where Jeff rolled a D6 on who'd go down to get the pizza, tracking the interactions among the remaining cast, which in one situation ended in deaths, dismemberment, and nervous breakdown, referred in show as Darkest Timeline, though Jeff and the still kind of inappropriately young Annie pursued a relationship in that one, so maybe it had its bright spots, including evil Abed swashing around in a wizard cloak. Earliest names I was considering for this podcast involved the Darkest Timeline concept, actually. 2017, for reasons it totally been nabbed by several other blogs and podcasts, and I was trying to think of some acceptably catchy name that included the concept of the penultimately darkest timeline, maybe dumbest timeline, but finally I decided on VideoFuzzy, and in reality I've got no window on relative timelines to this one, no way of knowing how it stacks up. It does seem dumb at times, and certainly dark at times, but as Mr. Cohen reminds me often enough, there is a crack, he says, a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in. So our best option when in darkness is seek out those cracks and widen them. And there were lots of great guest spots with LeVar Burton, John Hodgman, Sharon Lawrence, recurring characters played by Malcolm Jamal Warner, Brie Larson, and Studio 60 Direct Link American treasure John Goodman. Steve Agee and Brian Posehn's appearance gets 5 Meow Meow Beans, and then we had a few later, longer-term additions like Jonathan Banks of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, Keith David as Elroy Patashnik, and Paget Brewster of Criminal Minds, and they were awesome. But the show also featured briefly recurring appearances by Andy Dick as a drug-fueled hallucination, and along those lines, Chris Elliott playing Greendale's 70s-era founder and computer whiz Russell Borchardt, a reclusive Howard Hughes type in the season 5 finale, could have combined with Chevy's, by the end, clearly difficult-to-edit-around energies into a whirlwind of crazy weirdness and got sucked into the earth. But, well, we got what we got. The show, as I mentioned, made repeated references to Cougar Town, asserting the measure of success of that series was 6 seasons and a movie, which both shows managed 6 seasons with cable and internet assists. Until this year, I'd never seen seasons 5 or 6 of, well, either of them, but slowly working through what's available on Hulu. Cougar Town had some unmistakable, not remotely subtle promotional tie-ins with Target, and the same was true in Community with KFC and Subway and Honda. Oh, which reminds me, Martin Mull and Leslie Ann Warren showed up in 6 season episodes, so that was a fun sort of tie across with the 100th episode homage to Clue on Psych, and when Brian Van Holt appeared in an iPad attached to a Segway, it's pretty much how he also appeared in a late season reboot episode of Cougar Town, so that was quite a reference as well. And with Psych too, I guess, since Sean once spent most of one episode as an iPad. Fun. Both Cougar Town and Community managed 6 seasons, and Community faded to black in 2015 with the hashtag 6 seasons in a movie. It has been years, but, well, Serenity exists, and The Rock appeared in a Baywatch reimagination not forever ago, so I guess the best advice is to think good thoughts and hope for the best. Cross Connection. I referenced several cross-connections for Community already, along with its direct ties to Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, settling the Studio 6 Feet Under challenge for this one. But I wanted to mention a cross-connection I found in a 2nd season episode of Chuck, featuring Chevy Chase as Silicon Valley CEO and nemesis to Chuck's father, played by Scott Bakula. I also found Firefly's Inara, Marina Bakarin, in a 5th season episode of Medium, Garrett Dillahunt as Russian kidnapper in series finale of Life, Idris Elba in The Office, Dean Norris in Lost, Mayim Bialik and Stephen Fry in Bones, and Julie Hagerty playing Sarah Paulson's psychiatrist character's mom in the 3rd episode of Rob Thomas's Cupid reboot. But the guest spot I most wanted to highlight here was actually my golden thread pick for this one, Patricia Belcher. Golden thread. I first encountered her, I'm sure, as a ward nurse in 1990's Flatliners, which I'm certain I watched close to real time in a video rental because it was a conversation I remember us having as students in the honors house at UND in Grand Forks, how and who we would haunt and be haunted and for what sins. I talked about the 2017 remake near the end of episode 60 if you want to pull that one up. I might also have seen her with American treasure Judith Light in Who's the Boss. I could have seen her in Seinfeld, Sybil, and Martin, Lawnmower Man 2, The Drew Carey Show. Pretty sure I'd seen her in The Practice, and her 2005 role as a judge in Jennifer Finnegan's Close to Home is probably one of her first appearances in my collection. Hard to know for sure. She appeared in My Name is Earl, Boston Legal. She played a lunch lady in the pilot episode of Community. She was also delightful as Judge Hajendijk in Season 1 of Trial and Error, and In episode 57, I highlighted her appearance opposite Deborah Messing on a subway in the season 11 opener Will and Grace reboot. The show I saw her in most, of course, was Bones, where she first appeared in season 1 as federal prosecutor Carolyn Julian, and I just continued to run into this guy. Noah Hawley wrote in voodoo-themed episode 19, The Man in the Morgue, which I talked about briefly back in episode 16. I also name-checked her in my feature on a 4th season episode of Bones in episode 65. She also played an IT functionary in Better Off Ted, the role that drew my attention for this comment stream, actually, in the first season episode Goodbye Mr. Chips. Employees at every level of operation at Viridian Dynamics came together to help Ted get reinstated into the system after he was misnamed in his file and subsequently deleted. Belcher operates at another level, finding revelatory voices for characters she takes on in unexpected depths. She has a talent for imbuing the most outlandish concepts with deadpan solemnity, making her a lethal comic foil. I've enjoyed her everywhere I've found her, and wish her forever success. Now on VideoFuzzy, a fond reflection. Last month, the world bid adieu to a truly marvelous actor, Christopher Plummer. Everyone's talked about The Sound of Music. He had like one song in that, and I think he was on screen for 14 minutes. People loved The Sound of Music. They didn't love him in The Sound of Music. He had a greater chance to shine as the rogue hit-hiring hubby in the made-for-TV remake of Dial M for Murder. I mean, I'm guessing. I can't swear I saw it, but I'm sure I'd love to. He played heroes, villains, Sherlock, Lear, Iago, Macbeth, Outwidower Hal in Beginners, took one home for that, Captain Von Trapp, of course, and my very favorite of his roles, death dealer extraordinaire Harlan Thrombey, novelist and de facto head of Blood Like Wine, publisher of his dozens of thrillers and whodunits, and towards the end, host of the most diabolical do's. Hey, you got a motive to murder me? Let's hang. Knives Out, absolutely my favorite movie. Right up there with Clue, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Radioland Murders, Austin Powers, Fargo, Shakespeare in Love, and, of course, Noises Off. I like lots of different things. Implicit in Harlan's fatherly energy with his nurse, played by Anna de Moss, was a longing for the kind of parent he sees. Now, far too late, he should have been for his grown and terrible children, and Plummer played him with such grace, depth, light, and darkness. I loved it. Sure, Daniel Craig shone throughout. He got to run around being all alive and stuff. Plummer was mostly in flashbacks, which foreboding, but hey, especially when it opened, it washed McKellen's The Good Liar right out of my brain. So appreciated. Thank you, Chris Plummer. So many and so much. Cue lights. Applause, applause. Standing ovation. 18 curtain calls. Well, freaking done. Crossover. It's true. Normally I pull my Friday night feature out of my classic collection, but I think Community counts for the simple reason I'll be running into it any time now. The show premiered in the fall of 2009, and that's where I've gotten to primarily in this collection. As I watched the second season, I saw where Kevin Corrigan made his Community debut as Sean Garrity, a professor of theater studies who both led and completely made up an independent study credit in conspiracy theories. And I was intrigued to notice him anew. Oh, hey, that's what's-his-name, as one of the bad guys in the second season of Damages. Not, however, as intrigued as when... Okay, so in 2010, Chris and Dino wrote the Community episode in which Corrigan premiered as Jeff's conspiracy teacher in Conspiracy Theories and Interior Design, which featured the cold open exchange between Britta and Troy, where Britta said, "I'm gonna spend the night being a grown-up," and Troy said, "Fine, have fun being in bed by 9:30 and watching The Mentalist." And in 2012, Corrigan debuted his character Bob Kirkland in a 7-episode arc on The Mentalist. Coincidence? Well, It would be eerier, except that Corrigan has more than 150 acting credits, a solidly talented low-key workhorse. The Mentalist is an American television program, and this guy's been in a ton of those, including Medium and Fringe, actually. Just such a weird trajectory from a throwaway Mentalist burn to a recurring character on the show 2 years later. Ooh. And while I'm talking about the second season of Damages, I watched the rest of the finale as I started cataloging this set, and it actually does pull it together a lot more than I'd remembered in retrospect. Plus, it closed with Jem's Keep on Walking, a smooth, dark, soulful vibe I, at the time, pulled into my collection on the strength of having heard it over the closing moments of the episode, and it's still in there. Nice.
Diving into my classic collection.
Talking about my VHS to DVD transfers, first off, cataloged through disc 1100, I mentioned a few things I was going to bring up here, but this cannot wait 1 single second longer. On discs 1077 and 1078, I found the 2009 PBS Pledge Drive presentation of Celtic Thunder. The lights come up on a dramatic multi-level stage, onto which stride great manly men and one wee bairn in maybe his mid-teens, looking very first time any of us saw Justin Bieber, with more stage presence and range. Full orchestra accompanies songs. I guess some of them may be traditional, some sea shanties, and a few ancient pop hits. My immediate reaction ran as such. Well-mixed, well-managed, theatrical, very watchable group of guys, and enjoyable mix of voices. Lots of man energy, sea shanty Irishness, along with the Moody Blues, Foreigner, and the Eagles. And, oh wow, lots of stances, like there's a storm going on and they're all out braced again it on the pitching deck of a ship, barely keeping their balance instead of just singing, sometimes way too operatically, on a, and I can't emphasize this enough, perfectly still stage. And, oh, they had beautiful lasses in long flowing dresses with long flowing tresses drawn away from their harps and cellos now and then to dance among and around the men, taking on the roles alternately as temptresses or spurned and scorned lovers. Was Ladia! Gasps in Gaelic. And then you get something like the Moody Blues Knights in White Satin cover with full orchestral arrangement, and it's just really well done. And the really young teen singer running out, admittedly with some of the best vocal control I've heard of any at that age, singing Puppy Love, and the boomer bomb audience going nuts because they see this kid and they think it's 1959 again, and they themselves are teenagers, and oh, the nostalgia, and oh, the feels. Gasps in old. As a production, it just went all over the place. The set list seemed really random, but if you splashed out for a Celtic Thunder live show, you knew what you wanted out of it. Probably that one where they all swashed out in kilts, maybe, and they offer so many layers of performance you almost certainly experienced it. Shifting from the sublime and slightly ridiculous, on disc 1079 I found this music video I archived. The network logo is Pitchfork TV, which I suspect was an indie pickup on IFC. Pitchfork is a music review site Google said was purchased by Condé Nast in 2015, and all of those words have meaning, I'm certain. Max Tundras will get fooled again from his Parallax Error Will Behead You LP. In my search for information on it, I turned up a monochromatic music video a la David Lynch by way of college theatricals before I found the one-man band multi-wipe edit version that turned up in my collection, and I included the link in my blog and show notes. The warbly, lo-fi, muddle-mixed audio slouching along under discordant music tracks does, I feel, a disservice to the clever lyrics, which trace relational encounters across various social media platforms. Quoting from the song, I found the girl on Google image search. She was in the background of a picture of a church. And I found the girl on eBay. She was bidding on halfway to a three-way. And I found the girl on Friendster, where her taste in cinema defends her. These intriguing commentaries on the time track through to a triumphant melodica bridge closing with, "Then I found you." It stands out in this collection for its complete lack of context. It's, I made this in my garage, disregard for musical standards and celebration of indie for indie's sake. I shared this with a friend of mine who knows from music and can't quote his reaction without changing the explicit tag on this effort. This song could have been a punk staple a la the Dead Milkmen or Violent Femmes, nothing like out of place in those lineups. The White Stripes would have made this work. Production standards are what they are. It's okay to reject them. It's just harder to make yourself heard, maybe. I wish Max Tundra all the absolute best. Now, as I was saying earlier, I ran into a number of strong contenders for my Friday night feature in this set, including the pilot episode of Noah Hawley's cop dramedy, The Unusuals, New York's Second Precinct, where one of the homicide detectives also runs a diner and his new partner was pulled off of Vice in the opening seconds of the series to help investigate a mole in the department, which I imagine would make her the mole, but in fact, she's taking over for his late partner because hush hush and drama. I pulled this up because Amber Tamlin and Harold Perrineau of Lost, whose character in this one had strong premonitions of his own death, and Adam Goldberg, who has come up before in this podcast as Jim Gaffigan's friend after he turned up as the bad guy in an episode of Medium. I'll go into it more as more of it turns up, but I enjoyed it, which seriously hurt in the longevity department. I'm showing a run of 10 episodes. IMDb said all of them aired, but I'm not sure all of them aired in this market. I'm sure I'll find out soon enough. Another one I mentioned was the ABC murder mystery Harper's Island, which centered on a wedding held in a small isolated community with a ton of backstory and someone with an extraordinarily inventive mind running around murdering people in the most unseemly ways. I found it. I didn't watch any of it. I don't know any of these people anymore, and this is another one of those that feels like it failed to stick the landing. People wanted to do it, but it turns out it's actually kind of hard to write murder mysteries. Still, I think this one had some promise, so after I've got like 3 or 4 episodes to look at, I'll run a retrospective. One mystery I wish would turn up in my collection is Poro's Adventure of the Clapham Cook, the premiere for David Suchet's Poro series. The crack team of Kemper Donovan and Catherine Brobeck covered this short story recently in their All About Agatha podcast, and I wanted to take the opportunity for a quick shout-out. Well done! Their commentary on the Poro series adaptation as an introduction to the series and the characters drew insights from Suchet's memoir, Poro and Me, their own delightful reactions to the story, the episode, and the series, and their enthusiasm for this early adventure shone through. It made me hope that I've got that episode in here somewhere, and I wanted to bring them up anyway because they're coming up on an episode of The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side, which I loved both the novel and the adaptation, which I'm certain will be showing up in here at some point. Link in my show notes. Their podcast is all about Agatha. Check them out. They're awesome. I mentioned a few others just really quickly here. I found that Breaking and Peekaboo episodes of Breaking Bad, where Walt is learning about the distribution side of running meth, and the series gave us the barest insight here, still in the 2nd season, of just how dark Vince Gilligan was going to be going. Just a thumbnail here, but fans are going to know. Walt's ticked when Jesse gets ripped off, and, well, it's the one with the little kid and the ATM. So, yeah. The South Park I highlighted was on disc 1086 and featured Kanye West responding not well to a joke when someone asks if you enjoy fish sticks, and the indistinct fricative diphthong that makes it sound like you're saying you enjoy fish dicks and might in fact be a gay fish. Oh, that's hilarious. Well, Kanye wants to know who came up with this side-splitting funniness and tracks it to where Jimmy in South Park, Colorado came up with it, but Cartman was in the room, so he naturally remembers having come up with it himself, and Kanye doesn't know what to think and resolves that he must, in fact, be a gay fish. So, The show is a rag on then-future presidential prospect Kanye West and the sanctity of intellectual property. It's both. The 24 and Bones episodes, I pretty much mentioned what made them at all interesting up there already. I already highlighted Parks and Rec in episode 51, and these are first season episodes turning up in my collection right now. It improves markedly as the show continues. I did run into the series finale of the 2008 American run of Life on Mars on discs 1076 and 1077, which was a genuinely clever take on the storyline. Sam Tyler was an astronaut on the 2035 Mars mission, and his experiences as a cop in the 1970s New York was a neurostim simulation in transit. All the members of his team were characters in his mental projection, which sometimes glitched and made him remember the initial 2008 programming. Not gonna lie, this took me completely by surprise first time around, and I'd more or less forgotten the last 10 minutes of the show when I started skimming it again for this. One final glitch at the very end, though. The crew got a call from President Obama. The show very cutely declined to predict which sister ran, but since they'd referenced an ill father, that did narrow it down to the daughters, and since she'd have to have been at least 35 years old to run in 2032, that narrowed it down to, well, neither of them would have been eligible. Sadly, 2035 is the next potentially closest pass between our two planets, hence the likeliest launch target, and probably they were hoping no one would think about it all that hard. Oh well. Finally, this also turned up on Disc 1076. I got a reminder of when I lived and worked in Minot for a dozen years, and in 2009, FCC regs were changing enough that local broadcast television and cable providers were having what was becoming an unignorable slap fight, which centered on, oh wow, I want to make sure you're all sitting down for this. Are you ready? Money. Yes, I'm going to give you a moment to recombobulate yourself. It's only fair. I honestly should have warned you about that. What they were saying was that local channels wanted to dramatically increase their fees to rebroadcast their signal, and the cable provider was determined to not pay the increased fee to avoid raising our rates. Oh, all praise and thank you for looking out for us, but did you imagine we'd be interested in staring at a blue screen all night saying, local Fox affiliates won't let us rebroadcast their stuff for cheap anymore, so instead of a new episode of Bones, click over for a Law and Order rerun or a History Channel production about how ancient history was all aliens. Mid-Continent President Pat McAdera came on one night and told us that Mid-Continent Cable was more than willing to pay a fair price for rebroadcasting local broadcast signals, but, quote, this year, KXND's owners want to dramatically increase the subscriber fee Mid-Continent pays to rebroadcast their signal on our cable system. Unfortunately, the size of this fee increase is dramatic, he said, and could force us to increase the rates we charge our customers for cable services. And to limit the inconvenience, Midco said that they were providing set-top rabbit ear antennas free of charge while supplies lasted. They also flashed the local station's phone number for viewers to call in and demand the local broadcaster's programming be included in Midco's lineup. Thank you for your patience through this difficult situation, and thank you for being a Mid-Continent customer. What stands out to me is this might have been the very last second in recorded history that a broadcast network television affiliate would have had the power to negotiate substantial fee increases. In truth, by 2009, basic cable was producing decent content worth tuning into on its own, not 15 hours of new programming in prime time's worth, and certainly not in terms of production or ad sales, but whatever they lacked, premium cable and cable reruns of network programming more than made up for. You could have a reasonably enjoyable televisual experience without access to broadcast television at all. Add in streaming services. Wikipedia notes Hulu was founded in 2007, and along with all the basic and premium cable packages, there's an all but endless selection of online streaming and, yeah, even broadcast programming. I suspect that if broadcast affiliates tried this now, they'd be laughed out of the room and slapped with a nuisance fee.
Checking out my current collection.
In my current direct-to-DVD collection, well, I already talked about the 103 episodes of Community I've recorded, so we're done, right? Well, scrolling back through, I guess there are a couple of things. I feel like I pretty much already covered them. I mean, really, what I wanted to do is just have them as a record. On discs X377 and X378, I archived the first 3 days of presentations in President Trump's second impeachment hearings before the Senate. Not that I expected anything to come of it, though it was encouraging to see a majority outcome, if not a sufficient one. I didn't even bother with the minority leader's deflection summary at the end, because witnessing the CPAC hullabaloo in Orlando recently, it was ultimately meaningless. It meant nothing. We have learned nothing. What I really wanted was a record of what I felt were some of the best, most well-organized and well-presented arguments to be made in the case. I felt like the house managers presented the information quite well. I feel this information is available and is likely to be presented elsewhere with perhaps more relevance. Places where half the impaneled jury is less predisposed to downplay the events or their own involvement, less free to wander off and ignore testimony, and certainly less given to meet up with defense counsel and discuss the case. The main thing was to have the information all in one place. As I'd advised, I called up reports from the events themselves so they'd be fresh, because there have been disinformation campaigns going on since, and people disinclined to think poorly of their own candidates and party have deflected damning video evidence of people's behavior at the scene, eager to disavow any connection, forensic evidence, electronic record, people's own testimony, false flag attacks, which I'm just going to throw this out there. How dumb would you have to be as a Biden supporter to attack the certification of electoral ballots in an election you won? Wait, I take that back. There's evidence at least one such dimwit was on the scene who wanted to fight just to fight. So, and you're gonna love this, to 1/6 denialists, that means the whole dang group was probably Antifa. It takes a village. Well, it takes a village idiot. That's all I'm gonna say about it. I wasn't there, but it seems pretty clear to me that something happened, and that's what we've got courts for, so as to figure it all out and then assign consequences. Best of luck, everyone. At the very end of my cataloging effort, I included a docudramatic entry off of AMC called The Salisbury Poisonings, in which a town of 45,000 about an hour and a half west of London was the site of Novichok poisonings in 2018 that targeted Russian nationals and affected others more generally. I saw it airing on AMC and decided to check it out. I was so vaguely aware of the story referenced in the show, Russian nationals poisoned in Britain a few years back, and the story built very slowly in the series opener. By the end, I had a sense of the principles and was more or less clear on what happened. The poison involved continued to pose danger to the public. It was lethal at impossibly small concentrations and could sit for a long time on clothing or surfaces before someone encountered it and died. So, for the people of Salisbury, it was like living in a minefield. I can't say I was exactly dragged along by the storyline, but I felt there was enough there. I'll probably watch it. I thought it was presented quite well, particularly for having been released last year. The precautions they had to take in putting it together, some of which, like the presence of hazmat suits in the investigation, helped, I'm sure, all the more filming in the time of COVID.
Whatever you're watching, wherever you be, stream on the stream with me.
There wasn't a lot more to talk about recording-wise, but I didn't want to shortchange you in this effort. I skimmed Mrs. America on Hulu while putting this together, and I've got to say I truly enjoyed stepping through this take on American herstory, tracking the ratification process, the Equal Rights Amendment, and the subsequent culture wars. I feel like antagonistic viewpoints were presented with just enough honesty to lift them above caricature, though obviously a lot of liberties were necessary. From my perspective, I feel like I watched a polite, fashionable heel set the hardest, most desperate break on a lot of actual social progress in this nation in a, wow, you couldn't even hide it at the end. Wealthy, conservative men, and absolutely women, did everything they could to assist in the oppression of women demanding a say in the direction of their own lives. Such as one night's indiscretion or sexual assault. Well, if you lack the means of doing something about it discreetly, that's on you for the rest of your life, honey. Better drop out of school and raise it. Where'd the man go? Oh, too bad. Well, best get to work then. I mean, we can't have you burdening the state with your irresponsibility. Off you go. Daycare, schmaycare, pay a sitter and get to work. Good luck finding a good paying job without an education. Sex ed, birth control, abortion, that's sinful. Roll the dice and pray for the best. Blaming all poor women's problems on a lack of morals and discipline, relegating them and their children to generally problematic lives beholden to this construct that we can all just realize the American dream, pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, mire ourselves in student and consumer debt just for a chance to try. Some will manage, and the vast majority of us will not. Don't believe me? There was a very relatable commercial a few years ago that featured a middle-aged white male homeowner, paterfamilias, nice car and a boat, mowing a nice suburban yard. Anyone would regard him as successful, living the dream, takes to the camera and says, "I'm in debt up to my eyeballs." with all of the stress inherent to that realization. Mrs. America just drew the curtain back on the machinations, the hard-fought fight to maintain class divisions generally, whatever their motivations, of whatever conscious awareness it was and is a fight, one we see more and more clearly as its fangs and claws are year upon year more explicitly bared, a fight for the very survival of a status quo that works for a vanishingly small number of people. All as a means of cultivating a permanent servant class in this country. Pay it nothing, make it voiceless, divide, and keep it powerless, because once everyone has an equal say in the direction of their own life, regardless of sex, race, gender, or orientation, as soon as everyone is capable of realizing their dream in this world, we could bring about a better one. Cool message. I'm also reacting to The Handmaid's Tale, which I'm a forever fan of Elizabeth Moss and Yvonne Strahovski. I've only seen one episode of the Hulu presentation, but it holds up really well. I recently reread Atwood's Prophecy, and it feels like the show's holding true to the story. Great work, what I've seen so far. Also, I mentioned finding the final 2 seasons of Damages on Hulu. I've been enjoying season 4. Glenn Close and Rose Byrne from 10 years ago. John Goodman, good as ever. Judd Hirsch, swell. Strong actors telling a good story. I'd have enjoyed watching it on FX, but it certainly holds up, and it's well worth the wait. Great job. What else? Well, very quickly.
Now let's pull a little something down from off the shelf.
I am slowly working through DVDs I purchased a while ago and hadn't gotten around to watching. I recently got together with my friend Jesse Zimmerman with the intention of watching another round of bad movies, but in fact, we did not. We watched 3 excellent movies, and commenting on them wouldn't be anything like as much fun as making fun of them. I brought Matt Damon in Salisbury's The Informant, and Frances McDormand, Brad Pitt, and George Clooney and the Coen brothers Burn After Reading. Jesse supplied De Niro and Hoffman and Wag the Dog, and Jesus, they were dark, very cynical comedies, but ridiculous as the Kids in the Hall vibe I was getting off of The Informant, self-consciously 90s sets and costuming. Seriously, any one of them could have turned up in any scene. Matt Damon was fresh from the acting school of Bruce McCullough in most of it. The Informant was a brilliant piece of dark farce. Kathy with a C and Kathy with a K could have turned up anywhere in that office, wouldn't have been remotely out of hell. Scott Thompson could have played her in Scott Bakula's hair and looked right at home. Then, oh my, wow, fresh off this election, watching Wag the Dog, it's hard to imagine the lightness of touch with which it is imagined the American public could be. Oh no, now anyone with a YouTube channel can spout endless nonsense, and if you spout enough of it, troublingly vast swaths of voting Americans believe it. It has to be true. I mean, there it is, right there, on the internet. For Wag the Dog, they needed to cast actors, produce footage of war-torn Albania, write songs, and sneak them into the Library of Congress and reposition a sex criminal released from an overseas prison as a war hero at the cost of untold millions and a production executive's life. Hell, now they can destabilize an entire election with looped riot footage from Ukraine and some guy in his garage. Finally, Burn After Reading was such a bizarre confluence of broken people and their complicated stories, but it worked so well. A State Department operative, well, his drinking problem is getting tougher and tougher to ignore, so they're nudging him out, and his terrifying harridan of a wife intends to leave him. He put some thoughts together as a memoir, which somehow gets in with her financials that she's turning over to her lawyer, and his secretary loses them at her gym. 2 idiots at the gym find them, assume their valuable secrets, and try to get the guy to pay to get them back, which goes not well, and in fact, quite a lot of things start going absolutely pear-shaped for these people, but the vision of the show is that the problems of a handful of desperate people can absolutely amount to a quite watchable hill of beans if strung together and told in the right order. Gotta say, it was a lot of fun to get together and take in these shows. Great shows, better company, and good times. I should mention that it was Jesse that I showed Max Tundra's video to. Had a reaction to that, and afterwards Jesse showed me a quiz show smushed with a second quiz show, both of which demanded British showfolk do clever things on television. So, yep, I absolutely came out ahead in that cultural exchange. change. And with that, thank you so much for checking in on my video cataloging project. You can check out my catalog listing along with audio links at VideoFuzzy.blogspot.com, past episodes anywhere you get your podcasts. Feedback is always appreciated. You can contact me on my blog or podcast sites via email or through my VideoFuzzy page on Facebook, or you can follow me at TJVideoFuzzy on Twitter. For VideoFuzzy, I'm Terry J. Aman. Happy viewing.
It might be amazing, it might just be scuzzy. We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy.